fans? This is Kurt Toville with Counterpunch Boxing News, and I have some new news concerning Terence Bud Crawford. Get this. Crawford rules out Boots Ennis. Bomac says Bud calls the shots. Who should Bud fight next? Terence Crawford's trainer, Bomac, has confirmed that Jaron, there we go, Boots Ennis is off the table for Crawford's next fight. Ennis has had his chance for a big payday, but declined. He said Boots had his chance. Virgil Ortiz had his chance. Now you want to give him another chance. What the hell with him, McIntyre said. But he made it clear that Crawford is the one who ultimately decides who he fights next. And let me counterpunch. Decisions. Hierarchy for hierarchy. Respect is respect. The juice has been obtained. And Terence Crawford has done that. He's taken out the cash cow. He's beaten decisively Canelo Alvarez. Then back in the day, if you really rewind, you did have Virgil Ortiz. You did have Boots Ennis. Boots Ennis refused to leave 154 at a point of time because eventually that was going to put him in a fight with Virgil Ortiz, which hasn't still happened yet because Virgil has to fight Lubin first, right? But then, you know what I mean? That fight could have been already in play, or should have been, that could have been the fight that we should have saw, right? But Jaron Ennis has moved to 154 and Terence Crawford has went all the way to 168. And I have to agree with Bomac. I'm going to tell you why. For one, you're talking about fighters, or a fighter in Boots Ennis that is not 168. Neither is he talking about going to 168. You know what I mean? I remember those talks back in the day, a couple years ago, where Boots Ennis was, he was put on Front Street and he had an opportunity to fight Bud, but he wanted to stay loyal to Al Heyman. Okay, so therefore, you're not going to get the Bud fight because Bud he's not with Al Heyman. And Al Heyman is a guy that only really looks primarily at his fighters and control the fights that his fighters have. And that wasn't one of them. He didn't want Errol Spence in there with him. So, you know, no, not Jaron's not going to get in there because Jaron is that guy. However, a lot's changed since then. You know, he's got with Eddie Hearn. He's with Matchroom. So, you know, he's trying to get him in there, the Philly shows and all that. But he's not in the weight class. So if he was going to realistically fight Terence Crawford, he would have to go to 168. He'd have to be willing to do what Jermell Charlo did when he fought Canelo. Go to 168, especially from 154. And we haven't heard him say any of that. So the people that talk about a particular fight, you know, between Terence Bud Crawford and Jaron Boots Ennis, it sounds good. I mean, stylistic wise, but realistically, it doesn't make sense. Because unless Jaron Ennis is talking about, I want to go to 168 and do what Jermell and Terence did, right? By moving up to that weight class, there's really nothing to talk about. Now, I know Bomac is just trying to exercise the idea of the reality that Terence Crawford runs shit. You know what I mean? That's fine and all, but I mean, I don't really care too much about that. You know what I mean? Because if the fight can't realistically happen anyway, what's the point of saying, I do whatever I want to do? I got sick of Canelo Alvarez saying that shit. Canelo Alvarez was talking about what he wants to do, and I can do whatever I want. Like, that's like just somebody just calling shots. But, I mean, what are you really doing with the shots that you call? Are you fighting the best? Are you fighting the people that the public wants you to fight? Or are you just doing what you want to do? Because eventually, if you keep doing what you want to do, contrary of what the people want, people are not going to like you regardless of whatever you can do what you want, right? But no, I think that if Jaron Ennis wants a fight, I think he needs to do the proper things by moving his ass up in weight. And for me, he has time because he doesn't have to necessarily go and go to 168. He can go to 160. You got Jennebeck. You have a lot of people up there already. You have Chris Eubank Jr. You know, a lot of fights could be made. But just for them jump starting Jaron to fight Terence Crawford, You know, I don't think that he's done enough like that. You know, and he's an undefeated fighter, and he's very talented and tough and rugged. But at what point does the tough and ruggedness end? You know what I mean? See, for me, like I've told you guys, Jaron Ennis he reminds me a lot of Jared Swift Hurd. Big guy, takes a lot of punches, exciting, but eventually he ran up against someone that Joe Joyced him. Right? When Joyce went to fight Zhang, and finally somebody had enough punching power to take him out. So we don't know if that's going to happen, because he does take a lot of punishment at times. He takes shots, right? So, you know, he's defensively flawed to a degree. But because of that, we get to see how tough he is, which is a good thing. So he can take punishment, but just because you can take punishment doesn't mean you should take punishment. You know what I mean? So I do like the idea of a fight like that, but it's just not realistic. But you guys tell me what you think of Bomac shutting down the idea of Terence Bud Crawford fighting Jaron Boots Ennis next. And think about it. It doesn't have to be next. You know what I mean? What's all this next shit? Why are we fast tracking a guy at 154 versus a guy that just went to 168? You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But a catch weight of some sort could be in question. But you guys tell me what you think about Bomac's statement. Please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunch. Peace.